Welcome back to High Stakes, where we help you elevate your betting strategy. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay updated with our daily content. Looking for exclusive access to premium betting picks? Join us on Patreon. Links are available in the comments section below. Stay ahead of the game with High Stakes. The Fiesta Bowl, Penn State versus Boise State. Two teams coming together for their first ever meeting. As if the universe just decided now was the time for this epic clash. Penn State, with their elite Big Ten vibes, is marching into this matchup off a thrilling 38-10 victory over SMU. As they remind us all that they're, really good at football. Drew Aller is over here flexing 3,021 yards, while Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen run the ball like they're in a video game, making Big Ten defenses look like they're playing in slow motion. But don't worry, it's not just offense. Oh no, Penn State's defense is ready to smother you. They've only given up a casual 15.9 points per game and recorded more sacks than your average quarterback's bad day. And if you're an LSU fan who remembers Devon J. Thomas, he's here to remind you that he's still a menace. Then, there's Boise State, the team that thinks they're a Cinderella story every year. They've got a Heisman contender in Ashton Janney, who's just 131 yards away from shattering the single-season rushing record. The Broncos might not play in the SEC, but hey, they've been putting up points against who knows who, and now they get a shot at the big stage. They've only lost once this season, to Oregon, no big deal. But we're supposed to believe this team is ready to go toe-to-toe with a squad that just hung 38 points on SMU? Sure, Boise State's got some grit, but let's not pretend that the Nittany Lions aren't built like a steamroller. Injury report? Oh, you bet. Both teams have a laundry list of players questionable for this one, but I'm sure they'll soldier through somehow. And don't get me started on the defensive battle. Penn State's rushing defense is basically a brick wall, and Boise State? Well, they haven't faced anything like that all year. So, this is going to be a fun one. Boise State's best shot? Hope that Janney runs through a few arm tackles and pray that their month-long break from actual football wasn't spent napping. Take Penn State to cover the spread. They're just too much for Boise to handle. And after watching them run over SMU, you have to wonder if the Broncos even stand a chance. Take the over. With both teams capable of putting up big rushing numbers, we're going to see a lot of yardage. Fast-paced, big runs, touchdowns. This one's hitting the over, no doubt. Prediction: Penn State -11, over 53. Because why not? This Fiesta Bowl is going to be more entertaining than watching paint dry, for sure. Drew Aller over, under passing yards. Context: Drew Aller, Penn State's QB, has put up 3,021 yards this season, showcasing a strong arm and a well-developed passing game. Expect him to throw the ball plenty, especially if Penn State is in control early and looking to rack up points. Why it's interesting: Boise State's secondary has been exposed at times this season, especially against higher-tier offenses. If Aller is given time, he could surpass his prop, but Boise State's pass rush might force him into quicker decisions. Bet: over under 275 yards, depending on the sportsbook's line. Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen combined rushing yards over under. Context: Penn State's dual-back attack has been one of the most effective in college football. Singleton and Allen have been running like their lives depend on it, making Big Ten defenses look slow in comparison. Why it's interesting: Boise State's defense has been solid but hasn't faced an elite rushing attack like Penn State's. With a heavy focus on the run game, you can expect big yardage from both backs, unless Boise State can stack the box effectively, which would require them to take risks elsewhere. Bet: over, under 225 combined yards for both backs. Total sacks by Penn State defense. Context: Penn State's defense is known for its relentless pass rush, which has been one of the key factors in their success. The Nittany Lions have more sacks than most teams in the country, and with Boise State's offensive line possibly overmatched, this could lead to some serious pressure on the QB. Why it's interesting: Boise State has an efficient offense, but they haven't faced the kind of relentless pass rush that Penn State brings. This prop would depend heavily on the performance of Boise State's offensive line and their ability to protect their quarterback. Bet: over, under 3.5 sacks by Penn State. Boise State total points over under. Context: Boise State has an explosive offense, led by Janney, and a solid passing attack, but Penn State's defense has been nearly impenetrable this season, allowing very few points to opponents. Why it's interesting: this is a tricky prop, as Boise State will likely be playing catch-up for much of the game, but they could find some success if they can exploit weaknesses in Penn State's defense. However, their chances are slim if the Nittany Lions dominate both sides of the ball. Bet: over, under 20 points for Boise State. First team to score. Context: Penn State's offense has been very efficient this season, and with an explosive ground game and solid passing from Aller, they could score early. Boise State will need to execute perfectly to keep up and might struggle to score quickly, especially given Penn State's defensive prowess. Why it's interesting. This prop gives an early indication of how the game might play out. If Penn State scores first, it could set the tone for the entire game. Bet Penn State to score first, or Boise State to pull the upset early. Boise State total rushing yards. Context. Boise State relies heavily on Janney's ability to break through defenses. However, Penn State's rush defense has been near the top in the country, and they could put up a wall against the Broncos' ground game. Why it's interesting. If Boise State is forced to abandon the run and rely more on the passing game, Janney's chances of breaking the rushing record could go out the window. This will largely depend on how the Broncos' offense responds to the Nittany Lions' defensive front. Bet over under 150 rushing yards for Boise State. Total touchdowns over under 7. Context. Both teams have potent offenses, but the question is whether Boise State can keep pace with Penn State. The Nittany Lions have been putting up big scores, while Boise State has been more methodical. Why it's interesting. With both teams capable of putting up big yardage, touchdowns could come quickly, especially if both teams are running the ball well. The over might be the safer play if the game stays fast-paced, but it could also hinge on whether Penn State runs away with it early. Bet over under 7 total touchdowns. Longest rush in the game, over under 35 yards. Context. Between Janney and Penn State's running backs, there are going to be some big runs in this game. Janney has the ability to break free for huge gains, and Penn State's backs have shown they can turn a small hole into a massive gain. Why it's interesting. The game will likely feature multiple long runs, especially if the offensive lines are able to control the line of scrimmage. The over might be the play if you're expecting some explosive moments. Bet over under 35 yards for the longest rush. Penn State to cover the spread, Penn State minus 11. Context. Penn State is favored by 11 points, and for good reason. They're the more complete team, with elite offense and defense, and have been dominant all year. Boise State will need to bring their A game to keep it close. Why it's interesting. This is a fairly straightforward bet. If Penn State controls the game as expected, they'll cover the spread. If Boise State manages to find some magic and keep the game tight, they could cover. Bet Penn State minus 11. And that's a wrap on today's video, folks. I'm sure you're absolutely on the edge of your seat, eagerly awaiting the next thrilling installment of this channel. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because clearly you don't want to miss any of our daily videos. I mean, who could live without them? And while you're at it, smash that notification bell, so you can be the first to know when we drop more gems like this. Oh, and if you're looking for some premium picks, because, let's be honest, who isn't? Join our Patreon. It's where the real magic happens. Premium picks, insider info, and possibly even some mildly entertaining banter. So, hit that link, and we'll see you on the inside. Until next time, enjoy the game, make those bets, and remember, you're welcome.